I thought it appropriate to share this story of King Arthur. I first picked it up from a book called Collected Folk Tales by Alan Garner, and he called it Tarn, Wethelan. And once, long ago, on Boxing Day, or should I say back in those days, St. Stephen's Day, Arthur, his knights, and the Lady Guinevere were celebrating the hunt that they had been successful on that day. Travelling through the woods and hunting down boar and deer, they brought the meat back and were feasting and drinking as they would, until eventually their revelry was disturbed. The gatekeeper opened up the doors and ushered in a lady, a young beautiful lady, with long bedraggled hair, a torn dress, and wounds and bruises about her person. Arthur, standing up, asked his knights to go and tend to the lady to make sure that she's all right. Guinevere, being more observant and more careful, petitioned her husband to say that perhaps she should actually go and tend to the lady, especially as the knights were making this young lady shrink. Arthur agreed, and Guinevere helped in the best way that she could, giving wine, tending to the wounds, and allowing the lady to catch her breath, until eventually she was strong enough to say, a boon, I seek a boon from Arthur himself. To which Arthur looked at the lady and said, whatever it is that you require, name it, and I'll do my best to fulfill that honour. And the lady looked up at Arthur with tears in her eyes and said, please, my brother and I were travelling. When we got to the lake of Tarn, Wethelan, we came across a black knight, whose armour was as dark as night, and his tabard was black as mole's fur. He killed my brother in single combat, and did worse to me. He told me that he spared me so that I could pass you a message, which is this. Tell that cowardly Arthur to come down and face me if he dares, if he is any man who's worthy of a beard upon his face. Well, the court didn't like that. Not only had some vagrant decided to challenge their king, but also insulted him as well. Arthur looked at the lady and said, very well, I will avenge your brother, and I will avenge your stolen virtue. And he called to his knights to get his sword, Excalibur, his shield, his armour, and his horse, Llanre. And that very night, he set off from Carlisle down to Tarn, Wethelan, which was in Cumbria, and a couple days' ride journey. Arthur did indeed encounter the Black Knight. As he rode to Tarn, Wethelan, he saw this great warrior, dressed all in black, and a huge mace below his hands. The knight looked at Arthur and looked up and down, and said, who has come to challenge me? To which Arthur replied, I am Arthur, the one whom you have insulted and challenged. And the knight chuckled to himself. Well, I expected more of a man. Perhaps you will face me in combat, and then we shall see. And Arthur got down from his horse, withdrew Excalibur, and charged towards the Black Knight. The Black Knight raised his huge mace, and as he did, Arthur could feel his limbs begin to freeze, and his limbs begin to lock up, until eventually not one finger, not one muscle, not one limb could move. He was frozen to the spot. He tried so hard he could feel the sweat burning down his face under his own helmet. The knight was laughing at him. So you are Arthur, and even with the sword of power, you cannot take me. Well then, I have called you here because it appears that my lands don't belong to me. They belong to you and your kingdom, and so I will spare your life, and I will give you a quest. The quest is the answer to a question. If you succeed in finding the correct answer, then my lands will indeed belong to you, as will your kingdom. If you fail, then your kingdom and my lands all belong to me. What say you?" And Arthur, straining against this magic, said, "Very well. What is this question, and what answer do you seek?" And the knight looks at Arthur. "The question is, what is it that women desire the most?" And with that, the knight lowered his mace, and Arthur could feel his limbs, his fingers, and his arms and his legs move once again. "I will give you until this time next year to find your answer." And he turned away, walked away from Arthur. Arthur, a couple of days later, arrives in Carlisle once again, and he tells what happened to his knight and to the court. And the court was in uproar. Normally, on a quest like this, one of them would actually go and fulfill this quest, but Arthur had been challenged himself, and he wasn't just challenged, he was also challenged for the power of the land. So Arthur had to find this himself. He asked every single knight, every squire, every noble, every lady, every woman, everyone, including the common folk, what could this possible answer be? What is it that women desire the most? And of course, everyone gave as best answer as they could. Gold, love, affection, security, protection, all of them. To Arthur, none of these answers seemed right, and so for the next year, he scoured the land, asking every single person he came across, especially the women folk, because, well, they'd be the best to ask, right? What is it that women desire most? And so, when it came to Boxing Day, he knew his time was drawing close. So Arthur went through Inglewood, which is the great wood between Carlisle and Cumbria. And Inglewood was said to be haunted, and also a gateway to the other world. And with a heavy heart, Arthur rode through the paths, through the woods, until eventually he heard a voice saying, "Hello, Arthur!" And Arthur carried on. "Oh, sad times are these, when a king will ignore an old lady." Arthur stopped his horse, turned to the old lady, and lifted his visor and apologised. "My sincerest apologies, good woman. I am with heavy heart, for I am on a quest which appears that there is no answer." "Well," said the old lady, and as Arthur looked at her, she was an old lady, and being an old lady, she must be wise. So Arthur thought, "Good woman, perhaps if I ask you this question, you could find the answer." Yes, perhaps I could. For a price," she said. And Arthur thought to himself and thought, "Very well. Please, the question is this: what is it that women desire the most?" And the lady thought to herself and cackled. "Oh, that's an easy one. The answer is her own choice." So Arthur, not hearing that one before, yes, all right, yeah, very good, very good. Thank you very much. He wrote it on the scroll and put the scroll away. "But please, lady, what is your price?" For this, I want a husband, one of your knights as my husband." Well, Arthur thought, that doesn't seem too steep, and I'm sure that there are plenty of my knights who would be willing to make that promise. "Very well. I will go and give this answer, and should I be successful, and I'll provide you with a husband." And so Arthur carries on his journey a little bit more in good spirit rather than his miserable self. And when he reaches Tarn, Wethelan, the knight is stood there, again with his black armour, his black tabard, and his great mace. "So, Arthur, do you have an answer for me?" Arthur comes forward with his scroll and says, Yes, I do." "Good," said the knight, "and to make it more fun, I will give you 3 attempts. What is your first?" So Arthur read from his scroll. "The first is love. I don't think so, said the knight. The second is honesty. I don't think so again, Arthur. You have to do better than that, said the knight, chuckling to himself. Arthur puts away the scroll, puts it into his belt, and says, very well. The answer to your question is her own choice. At this, the knight screams. His mace shatters into 1,000 pieces. And he said, here there is only one woman who could have given you that answer, and that is my sister, the Lady Ragnall. Very well, Arthur. You have succeeded. Your lands, your kingdom, and my lands are all yours. And with that, the knight skulked off. Arthur took a deep breath, got back onto his horse, and rode through the Inglewold once again. He picks up the old lady and rides her back to the castle in Carlisle. The court are ecstatic to see their king and this old lady upon the back of his horse. And Arthur explains exactly what happened, including the answer the old lady gave. Sir Bors, one of the knights, he gets his goblet and says, oh, excellent news, excellent. 3 cheers for the old lady. Hip, hip, hurrah, hip, hip, hurrah, hip, hip, hurrah. And the entire court is celebrating, of course. But Arthur goes, wait. There's one condition. When this old lady, Lady Ragnall, gave me her answer, which was the right answer, there was a price to pay. And that is that one of you, my knights, will be her husband. At this point, all the knights decide to guffle amongst themselves. There's lots of, yes, well, I'm already married, says one. I've got a quest next Thursday, says Bedouin. And Sir Kay, great brave Sir Kay, he says, well, yes, well, but there's one voice, there's one knight's voice, which Arthur really hoped wouldn't have spoken up, but he knew that this young knight would be the perfect one. And that one voice said, I'll do it. It's okay, uncle, I'll do it. And the court all turned towards Gawain. Brave young Sir Gawain. Gawain who takes any quest and often succeeds. And Gawain looks upon Arthur and says, yes, uncle, I'll do it. I'll marry the lady. She gave you the truest answer, and because of that, the kingdom is still yours. I will do it. And Arthur, the heavy heart, says, nephew, thank you. Very well. Everyone, let us all get ready for the wedding and begin the feast. And so the feast is prepared, the drinks are poured, and Arthur marries both Lady Ragnall and Sir Gawain, until eventually it comes to bedtime. And of course, in marriages, especially old medieval marriages, the marriage isn't complete until the groom has consummated with his bride. And in the bedchamber, Gawain looks upon his bride with her long dank hair, her hooked nose and chin, her one huge eye, one small eye, and wrinkly, aged body, and shudders, knowing what he must do. And so he turns his back and begins to pray. The Lady Ragnall says, oh, my husband, I see that you are repulsed by me. Perhaps you should look again. And Gawain shudders to himself ever so slightly. No, really, I think you should look again. Gawain did turn, because the voice that came from the old lady wasn't an old lady's voice. He turned, and instead of the old crone before him, was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Her hair was long and red, her skin as white as snow, her eyes a glittering green, and her lips a full, dawn, pink rose. This is my true form, she explained. The Black Knight, that was my brother. And he was cursed, as I am cursed. He was cursed with his own bitterness. I am cursed with the form of an old lady, which can only be seen on one part of the day. And so, to you, my husband, I give the choice. Would you rather me young during the days, so that your court can admire me, but you'll be going to bed with an old woman? Or would you choose to have me as young at night, and so that even though the court may see thee with an old lady during the day, you'll be with me during the night? My lord, the choice is yours. What do you choose? And Gawain looks at her and says, "Oh, my love, my wife, I cannot make such a choice. If I choose one, I'll be ridiculed during the day. If I choose another, I'll be ridiculed during at night. Not only that, but you'll be ridiculed as well. This is your curse. What do you choose?" And with that, Lady Ragnall smiles. She rushes up to Gawain and kisses him on the lips, her arms wrapped around him, and says, "Thank you. Thank you. By giving me my own choice, you have broken the spell. And so I will be as young, which is, again, is my natural form. We can grow old together, have children, and live the rest of our days." And so, the very next day, the court, awaiting anticipation and horror, thinking, poor Gawain, marrying that old lady. Oh, not just an old lady, but a minger of an old lady as well. Oh dear. And so the court all turn their heads when they hear the doors open. And absolute surprise and silence falls upon them when they see Gawain, and not the old crone, but they see Gawain and the beautiful Lady Ragnall walking through. Gawain explains what happened, and the court rejoice. Not only has Gawain been married to help protect the kingdom, but also that the curse that was placed upon her and her brother has been completely and utterly destroyed and broken.